Welcome to a new CentreCourt MBA Festival with Poets and Quants. My name is Matt Symonds, and with my co-host John Byrne, we're taking the next 2 days to sit down with MBA admissions officers, students, alumni from the world's leading business schools to discuss both the personal and the professional benefits of an MBA, and we hope set you up for long-term success. We hope that you'll enjoy the next 2 days on your own personal journey to business school. Now, the MBA can be an incredible opportunity to discover the world. And for the first panel of the day, I'm joined by two of Europe's leading business schools, EDHEC Business School based in France and the Copenhagen Business School based in Denmark. Both are triple accredited, and that's true of fewer than 1% of the business schools in the world. They offer these 1-year or 10-month intensive programs that are top ranked for mobility, career progression. If you want to look at sustainability, you look at the Nordics, and happiness in Denmark too, of course. EDHEC, one of the top schools for ESG, and 58% women in the current MBA classroom. Now, to discuss all of that in much more detail, it's a pleasure to welcome Françoise Evangelista. Françoise is a senior recruitment manager at the EDHEC Business School, and Andrew Meller, MBA admissions manager at Copenhagen Business School. Thank you, both of you, for joining us at CentreCourt. And here we are, we get started, and Françoise, perhaps I can turn to you to give us a little bit of the color and the personality of the EDHEC Business School.
Yes, so just in a few lines, EDHEC Business School is an old school, what we call a grande école school, since 1906. And the global MBA, the full-time MBA, started more than 50 years ago. So a very old MBA that is well implanted now at EDHEC. And the home of the global MBA at EDHEC is in Nice, in the city of Nice. Do you want me to give you information?
Yeah, I mean,
programs
Nice, of course, okay. on the French Riviera. Your footprint also extends. You have a campus in Paris, one in the north of France in Lille, and then a very global perspective.
Yes, we have 5 campuses and 3 are in France, Paris, Lille, which is the main campus, and Nice, the campus of the global MBA, the PhD in finance, and all of our finance-related MSCs, Master of Science, are based on the campus in Nice too. Right. So the global MBA is a short MBA, 10 months, very intensive action learning program, with lots of specificities, and maybe I can wait for your questions, Matt, on these.
That would be a pleasure to dive deeper, and in an hour we'll also have one of your EDHEC students, Juliana, who will be joining us. But yeah, let's move to Copenhagen, and Andrew, you've been at the school now for 5 years. What makes it such a special place?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we're what you'd call probably in North American terms would be a non-profit school, and as you rightly said, well ranked and triple accredited. But I think it's probably more about the ethos. By European standards, we're quite large. We're about 20,000 students, but the MBA programs themselves are actually on purpose very small. We have 3 of them, and I'm from the full-time MBA program, but we're 45 students per year. We keep it what you might call boutique sized each year. As you rightly say, we're a 1-year full-time general management MBA, but we have a very strong focus or ethos connected to sustainability and this Scandinavian style management and leadership that I think we'll obviously cover probably throughout the throughout our chat today. On the practical side of things, it's mostly international students that come and join us, because I think they're also looking to get that work experience and that, as you rightly said, that work-life balance experience, but of what we've got here in Scandinavia. And they have this really helpful, actually, new development here from the last few years, where we have this 3-year automatic post-study work visa for those who've completed their MBA. So it's nicely tied up in a few different ethos things and practical things that have really sort of helped us stand out over the last few years in particular. So I won't go into too much detail right there, but I feel like that's a nice sort of overview to sort of give you an idea of, yes, we're a general management MBA, but that's sort of our ethos and how we're connected to that.
Well, let's just stay, Andrew, with this idea of a deliberately boutique size of program within a school of 20,000 students, but certainly attracting top talent from around the world. As we look at the current class profile, people from different geographies, different industries, different education backgrounds?
For sure, yeah, and it's something that I've worked in other universities back in the UK as well, but something I found really refreshing when joining Copenhagen Business School was the genuine focus on the value of diverse perspectives in the classroom. And it's about over 90% international students. People are coming to get this year in Denmark, and about 60-70% of our students stay in Denmark afterwards, which is obviously quite high. It tends to be industries that match what's strong here in Denmark because of that. So some of the usual suspects for MBA programs, so like consulting's large, but there's some interesting ones that are quite local here. So like healthcare, health sciences, pharmaceuticals, that's really big. Financial services, but energy and sustainability as well, of course. Logistics and tech is big here too. So we tend to see people coming from that background and then going into that industry as well. On average, our students have around 7 years work experience post-bachelor's. So maybe age average would be around 31. Obviously, we don't look at age, but everybody always asks that. So that's why I mention it. Yeah, really, and really good progression in terms of, let's say, career progression afterwards. Over 90% were in roles within 6 months of the class of 23. So if you match and align to those industries, I think it's a really strong proposition in that regard.
Right. Françoise, people have been flocking to Nice and to the French Riviera for since centuries for their well-being. Of course, now they can come to EDHEC for their professional well-being. Tell us a little bit about the current class profile. I just mentioned the percentage of women in the full-time MBA. Very impressive.
Yeah, absolutely. So in terms of ages in the class, we have an average age of 32 in the class and 8 years of professional experience. It's one of the most mature full-time programs that you can find, probably because it is a short program of 10 months. And in one of the specialization tracks that we have related to entrepreneurship. So usually the entrepreneurs are a little bit older than the others in the class. So this brings up the average. Currently, we have nearly 30 nationalities in class, a class of approximately 70 students every year. Indeed, the percentage of female has gone up since, I would say, 2 years now. And specifically due to also our scholarship policy, because we do provide some nice scholarships for women in leadership. So this attracts ladies in the class and great for the group discussions also. With the maturity of the class, we usually have about 10% of our students coming with families, spouses and grandparents, and it's quite a family destination too, and good work-life, personal study balance also. So that does attract these people who are a little bit more on the older side. And a very diverse class also with, of course, ages, nationalities, but also sectors and the entrepreneurs, as I mentioned. And in 2024, EDHEC MBA was ranked first in poets and quants for entrepreneurship. So very proud of that ranking too. And yes, so for the diversity of sectors, probably the tech sector is the first one in the class, then the consulting sector and financial services. So these are the three main ones attracting our candidates today.
Right. Andrew, we talked about the experience that your students have, and later on over the next 2 days of CentreCourt, some of the US schools that tend to trend a little younger in their full-time MBA program. But do you think that candidates that are bringing 7, 8, 9 years of professional experience, is there both then a level of classroom discussion and perhaps even a sense of what they're looking for in the next steps of their professional development? Is that something that you see among your students?
Yeah, it's a really interesting, quite broad-ranging question in a sense, because I mentioned that the average is 7, but our minimum's 3 years work experience. And in my experience too, like it tends to be like a third of the class is maybe 3 to 6 years, a third is 6 to 9 years, and maybe another third is 9+ years work experience. So it ties into that diverse perspectives that we're trying to engender. And if there's too dominated by one group, it can alter the dynamic. But I also think that's partly why you might be looking for an MBA in Scandinavia or Europe, because you are looking at maybe a different style of MBA compared to, and I'm generalizing terribly here, but compared to North America, it's particularly in Scandinavia, the work culture here, and that translates definitely into the classroom, is around collaboration rather than competing against each other. So there's an expectation, and obviously we get buy-in from the students from this to help take self-ownership of it, but an expectation that you will be collaborating, and that's why you're coming to get different perspectives and collaborate with your classmates. And in fact, on our concentrations, which is like our electives where you go deeper dive into a particular topic, they do combine with the executive MBA. So they're also getting senior level managers perspectives there, and they tend to be more Danes. It tends to be more like 60-70% Danes on that program. So again, there's that cultural collaboration and different perspectives there too. So I think that's an important point for your wider thoughts of why, if somebody's considering an MBA, if that's important to you, that will reflect on what type of MBA you end up picking, because there are definitely different styles in that regard.
Right. You'd spoken, Françoise, about the intensity of 10 months and everything that you pack in. Just to go back to entrepreneurship, something that EDHEC is justifiably renowned for, is there nevertheless this opportunity? You know, you've had a successful early stage of your career, now returning to business school and want to explore new pathways and new opportunities. Is that something that you see in entrepreneurship as one of those themes that students really want to explore during their time at the school?
Yes, definitely. And even if entrepreneurs come to the class, sometimes it's not specifically to stay in the entrepreneurship mind. They might then change their mind when they come into the program. And it can be also vice versa. People who are targeting a specific role in a specific industry might suddenly decide to become an entrepreneur when they are in the program. And so that we see that quite often happening in the class because of this diversity and the networking that's going on. And it sparks new ideas. And that's why when we have the choice of full specialization track and the elective period, we don't ask our students to choose as soon as they arrive, because we found that a lot of them are changing their minds after the first semester. So then leaving the choice in January, because the program starts in September, to then decide in which direction they want to go and to choose their specialization track.
Right. Now, whether it's finance and a strong analytical mindset, entrepreneurship and an appetite for risk, beyond academic credentials, of course, Françoise, and GMAT and GRE scores, are there characteristics that you like to see when you're assessing candidates applying to the school? Certain characteristics or personality traits that will be very successful in the EDHEC program?
Yeah, I think the first one would be a demonstrated leadership experience, either it be personal or voluntary or in their job. Collaboration also in teamwork. A demonstration of initiative to improve, for example, when they're in a group project in the class. Of course, cultural sensitivity and global awareness, because the class is very diverse. I would say open-mindedness also, emotional intelligence and empathy, because they need to be able to work with these cultural differences. And this is what the business world is like when they are back in job search. So we're quite sensitive to that. And also how they would contribute to the EDHEC community. So that's important for our alumni also later on. They need to have something unique, of course, and also bringing something to the class. That's very important too, and accomplishing things in group work.
Right.
That's the main thing.
Of course, all of those distinct, unique characteristics. Andrew, you touched earlier on the importance of collaboration, both at the business school and perhaps in wider Danish society. So again, characteristics that you feel will serve them well, both in the program, but perhaps with a 3-year option and visa to then stay beyond that, that also are going to help them in the next stages of their career.
Yeah, it's actually quite similar to what Francois mentioned. So it makes sense with similar sort of programs in a way. I also talked to students about I did an MBA myself, and I think some of the characteristics to carry forwards with yourself would be in the program and post-program would be time management, prioritization, and discipline. Particularly if you end up picking a part-time program, but a full-time program that applies too, because it goes intense, and particularly at certain times in year you will need that. So alongside of what Francois mentioned, I would say those things will be put to your test during the MBA, and that can carry through when it comes to finding your strategy project, which is your company project, and then taking that onto your career step afterwards as well. So taking that momentum from the MBA as well. Those things are important alongside what was already mentioned in terms of I mean, we use some slightly different terminology right around proactivity and resilience, but it's similar sort of things that are important. And we're looking for that theme of connection and alignment, basically. So what they've done previously, academically, career progression, why our program specifically, and then what your sort of 3 to 5 year plan post MBA looks like. Those things connect. If they're coherent, it tends to lead to a strong application and somebody who's going to make sense for the program for themselves as well as us.
Right. As you've met, Andrew, with so many candidates, their own personal, unique stories, and perhaps sometimes you hear, well, I could never picture myself at business school. I assume that, MBA students or business, it's like this, and they might have some sort of preconceived ideas, and yet, you're thinking the voice, the perspectives and insights that they will bring. So how do you like to share the business school experience with someone that had almost discounted themselves and said, am I the right sort of person for business school?
Yeah, because it's an interesting, because we're looking for alignment, but also you don't want to discount. You want this diverse perspective. So it's almost like a diverse selectivity, because obviously you need to have people, strong candidates, and who can contribute towards each other. So when I tend to speak to people, it's drawing out that, like I say, those connections between what they've done previously. But I tend to actually ask them to spend their time and energy in the initial stage on visualizing or putting together that 3 to 5 year plan. I'm not asking them to plan out their entire life, but defining their personal and professional goals and working backwards from those to sort of visualize that alignment, which might not even necessarily land on an MBA. But if they start to talk about certain skills that they need to develop, like, for example, leadership and some of the ones we've mentioned, then you can start to piece the gaps together if they feel like maybe plateauing in a career and need to add certain business schools. And like, for example, why I took my MBA was missing certain finance skills. Then that starts to build a picture of why an MBA, and you can connect the dots there for industry alignment, etc. too. But it isn't necessarily you need to have a business or finance background. In fact, half of our students don't. So that's you can draw out those stories out of people and help them to sort of visualize that. But it's that first stage where, because you could Google MBA or start and you'd end up with a million answers and probably end up more confused. So I tend to recommend that as a starting point, and then we can work on that alignment with them or help them discover that. Because again, that can differ from a European MBA. We have a much more diverse classroom, probably, and that's no criticism of the North American MBAs. Some of them are absolutely fantastic. It's just they might be a different style in that regard. So that's something for them to weigh up for sure.
I suppose I'd love to come back to habits of leadership, but just before I do, you'll obviously be looking at balance sheets, some of the finance and analytical aspects of the program that Andrew was describing, and that might be inhibiting to some. In reality, are you looking for a sufficient comfort with numbers to do well in the program, but you don't need them to be a rocket scientist?
Exactly. Well, it's true that we do have the aptitude tests that are needed to enter the program, and specifically also the English test level, because the communication and the collaboration in groups is essential and everybody needs to be on the same level. But I think that we have also some students who want to show that they are strong in other aspects, and we help them with that, specifically with the soft skill development program that we have in the program, which is called Lead 360, and it's learning about lots of different courses and aspects of business, but understanding more their soft skills and how they can help the others in the class, like for example, negotiation skills, presentation skills, agile leadership, and topics that recruiters will not see on a CV, but they would like to hire somebody who has these skills. So we're really integrating this Lead 360 program in the career development program, and which is very personalized, and also because of the different ages that we have in the class. You cannot coach somebody the same way if they are 26 or if they are 45, and we do have quite mature people in the class. So yeah, I would say that that's important.
You mentioned 30 nationalities among 70 students. So as we think about leadership in the context of cross-cultural communication, working with teams with very different cultures, is that apparent on those personal skills, how they're then learning to work with individuals very different from themselves?
So this is done specifically in the group work that we have when the class arrives in the month of September. We work closely with our program managers to understand how the groups will be built from the beginning of the program. So the students typically go through more than 5 or 6 different groups in the 10-month program, and we help them to build these small groups from the start of the program. So nobody the same age, the same nationality, the same professional sector, understanding their strengths, their weaknesses, because we know them quite well in the admissions process. And so it's important that they can learn together, and working on a specific case study, that it might work specifically one way in Japan and completely in a different way in Italy or in the USA, and that also enhances the learning experience. And then after these small groups, there is another part of the program, which is our Sustainability Impact Challenge, where the students are working on real sustainability issues proposed by companies. And here they work in larger groups, in groups of 10, 12 students, where they are then able to pitch their ideas. And there is a competition, which is typically like a business game, but it's completely focused on sustainability. So that's another moment of exchange and learning in the groups.
Right. Andrew, Copenhagen Business School, top ranked when it comes to sustainability, ESG, by the Financial Times and others. And how perhaps thoughts on the planet a part of personal values and the things that are very important to students in your program. What advice do you have to then find the program that will support and foster those values and align with the next steps of their personal and professional development?
Sure, yeah, I touched upon it a little bit earlier as well, because particularly if you're looking at sustainability from our perspective, there's layers to it, right? So there's Denmark's reputation, there's the school's reputation, then the program itself, the dean, his research area is sustainability. So once you got down to your desk-based research, if you decided that was particularly important to you, you would then start to understand, okay, Copenhagen Business School, the MBA there is very aligned towards this. But I think it goes back to that initial phase where you need to decide, okay, what are your important criteria for you in terms of the end point, next 3 to 5 years is usually what we say, because we want the MBA to have you to have impact. And the personal's not something you should neglect either, because obviously if you're looking to have family with you, or you're looking to get some work experience in Europe or things like that, it's that can also be something. So I start with that usually to recommend people. The next stage would probably be desk-based research, because there is a lot of really strong information out there. Then things like poets and quants, of course, comes down into that category, I suppose. And then when you're starting to narrow that down, I then say that's the point when it's really good to start to reach out to admission staff or recruitment staff, whatever terminology they use at that particular university. And as you then perhaps progress towards being ready towards, let's say, application stage, current students and or alumni, I'm always astonished by applicants when they get to an end point and they haven't spoken to somebody who's been there and done that. It's something we even put in our application form now. We can't force people to do it, of course, but we strongly recommend to do that, to speak to somebody to get a really, really good perspective on, okay, what's the ethos? What's it like on the ground? So those 3 or 4 layers would be like what I would say to people in terms of the practicalities of researching, because it doesn't necessarily need to be sustainability. Let's say if entrepreneurship's important to you, or engineering or whatever, that it tends to be those steps. You'd be surprised that people can struggle with where to start or how to start. But yeah, that's the biggie that people miss, is they're speaking to a current student or an alumni, because we can give you the staff all the statistics on the careers and scholarships and fees and things like that, but you want to get that perspective firsthand for sure.
Yeah, no, it's fantastic that this panel is then followed by 2 very
Exactly.
students from both of your schools, and a very complementary perspective, I'm sure. As we think about careers, Françoise, and the idea of possibly using the MBA to make a transition, they're building these technical, analytical skills, the soft skills, leadership 360 that you were describing. How do you also then support them, perhaps through a career management center, to think about areas professionally that they would thrive, and new opportunities to explore?
Well, it's true that we always talk to our students and saying, well, the MBA is an investment in your future self and the kind of leader you want to be, but also thinking of how we can help them in the post-MBA career plan. We always tell them that the next job after the MBA will not be their last job. So it's good to be able to reflect and anticipate maybe more in the future and a long-term goal. And we assess this also in our essays, also where they see themselves later on. So self-reflection, and saying to them what we can help them, of course, with all the tools that we provide in the career program, because it's very dedicated to the MBA class, but understanding their needs and where they want to be, and if they want to do what we call a triple jump, because we have quite a lot of students who tend to be attracted to the fact that they would like to change 3 different aspects of their career goal, changing location, changing sector, changing industry. Some only do one specific kind of change, but they are very inclined to then reach out to alumni to understand how they performed in their jump, how they were able to reach this goal after. So very close to the alumni. Also, I'm personally in charge of the alumni engagement for the Global MBA, so I know the MBA alumni very well. And it's really to put them in contact regularly, to be able to understand how they reached their post-MBA goal.
Yeah. We talk about the idea of it's not just that first job coming out of business school. And here we are in February 2025. Is it possible to have a workshop or a discussion without talking about AI? Andrew, I'm going to take you to that place right now. As we think about whether it's the field of AI, big data, so many moving parts and what the future of work will look like, its impact, and many other things. How do you then equip your students or just help them with a mindset that's going to give them strong guidelines in the next steps of their career, where we're still working out AI, where we're still working out all of these things, and they're going to have to adapt?
Yeah, I think if we focus on AI as an example, that's partly why in the structure of our program, we have these concentrations that are deeper dive onto a particular topic. And in fact, the digitalization concentration is a perfect example because it's literally been updated this past year to be AI and digitalization now. So you have your core modules in those areas such as data and analytics, as you say, digitalization itself. But the idea being that we can update these things because I think there's been a very clear change this past year in terms of the participants on that concentration and on the programs because it includes our executive MBA too. We're definitely seeing that clear marcation now from that experimentation phase that was with AI when the students were coming in and the participants wanted to learn, okay, what could possibly be done with this, to now seeing they want the practical implementation. How does this impact governance? How does that plug into our legacy IT? How does that plug into our cybersecurity? And particularly those from those backgrounds, those are big scenarios that you need to think about because cybersecurity, even that as an example. And there's actually legislation here in the EU. And in fact, I'd encourage anybody watching to look at one of our digitalization professors, Ronnie McDalia, who literally did a talk about AI last month. And then the day after was when DeepSeek came out and there's a big impact. And so he was literally talking about that the day before because he has good expertise in China. So it was a really topical way of sort of keeping that fresh because we try and connect that to our alumni events and have this lifelong learning ethos that then students can come back to afterwards and keep that community going. So that's going to fly still. It's still really nascent as well as being really developed at the same time. So you can see in any MBA program, and obviously the ones we've done too, is probably finance and strategy or evolve, but not maybe as quickly as this. So it's extremely relevant to have those types of things updated continually.
Presumably, Françoise, the need to continually assess the curriculum or electives that you're introducing, the expertise of your faculty. As you look at AI and other things, is that something that's both a student-led initiative? We want to look at these fast evolving themes, but also, of course, faculty, the dean, yourselves, that are constantly looking to reflect not just where we are today, but where the future of work will be tomorrow.
Mm-hmm. So for the EDHEC MBA, it started actually during just after COVID, when our Professor Michel Sisto, who is in charge of the AI track at EDHEC and really giving a lot of speeches on this topic. She, when she was the director of the program at the MBA at the time, she was actually reaching out to companies and they were mentioning that this is something that they were really looking for in terms of the knowledge of the MBA students and what they were going to learn. And that's when we decided to put in place one of our specialization tracks, which is the digital innovation and AI. And of course, a great demand since that year to go into this track because that's how the business world is, the direction it's going in today. And now the MBAs today are really tending to prepare these leaders to perform out of the business traditional knowledge to more expertise in this topic, and it's one of the most chosen tracks in our program. But it remains quite a small group because there is a 1 month track, but then there is a 1 week business trip abroad, and we take the students to London, and they actually go out and visit companies related to AI. And we can do that because we have a relatively small class and to do all the company visits. And this is part of the business trip for the digital innovation track.
Right. with François's comment, Andrew, about feedback from your companies, from recruiters. These are skills that we're increasingly looking for. Is your sense that taking this year, building additional skills, thinking about how digital transformation, AI are going to change the workplace, that your MBA students then have a competitive edge going back into the job market?
Yeah, what's interesting about that is actually they don't tend to, obviously they find the practical information helpful, but it doesn't tend to be that they pick out. They tend to, still alumni pick out our leadership discovery process, which is probably the most unique aspect of the program, which then gives you more future-proof skills in that sense. Probably that's the wrong terminology, but basically we have a specific approach here called the leadership discovery process, and it's often picked out, like I say, by our alumni as their highlight of the program. And I feel like that's probably the one that gives this sort of Scandinavian approach to management and leadership, which can help you with managing projects that are ongoing and or rather ongoing in complexity and across multi-disciplines, I suppose. And the key word here is discovery, because rather than us preaching, okay, this is the way to approach AI, or this is the way to approach leadership. And honestly, that type of approach here doesn't fly. My way or the highway leadership doesn't fly here anyway. So it's a year-long module designed to help them understand themselves much better as a leader and as a person towards leadership. So we aim to give them this toolbox which they can build throughout the year that can then be used to adapt to different situations, as you say, maybe different stakeholders, even different personalities, and they can take the lessons learned from navigating those different hierarchies here as well. And we try and get that hands-on perspective, and we actually have an external consultancy company come in to facilitate that. There's like a leadership simulator exercise part of it, giving them a mentor. So that's where I think you can plug in the leadership skills with the realities of what's affecting things at the moment. So I think rather than focus on a specific concentration, because we can always update those, I think that universality of the LDP, the leadership discovery process, is where they find the most benefit on that, to be honest.
Talking about alumni, as Andrew mentioned, Françoise, if I was to talk to a EDHEC alum who's perhaps 10 years out and say, well, as you look back, enjoying the program, but things that you've brought with you, maybe you didn't even realize it during the MBA program, but they've served you incredibly well in the following years. What sort of things do you think they would share?
I think that the thing that comes out the most is how to work with cultural diversity in teams. So that's really the main one that comes out, and understanding how different cultures can work together, how they can collaborate, how they can improve the business they're working in. So that really stands out. And thinking back, they often mention all the passion of their classmates when they were working together. And it was also a self-reflection on stopping work 1 year and really concentrating on themselves. So it's a self-reflection year, of course. Everybody who takes an MBA has decided to take this pause in their career and to self-reflect and to understand. I think that teamwork would be the first thing that stands out.
Right. Now we've talked about your two programs both being incredibly international, which and then graduates that go on to pursue international careers, whether France, Denmark, elsewhere in the EU and beyond. One of our viewers has perhaps naturally asked, Andrew, you've spoken a little to this, but in terms of students studying in France, Denmark, in the EU, and your thoughts on the EU job market, both the ability to stay and, if you're very confident about the sort of opportunity. So Andrew, just start with you, because you talked about a 3-year extension.
Yeah, that's something on a very practical level to investigate with each specific country that you're looking at, because whether it's just for yourself personally or if you're bringing in family, there's obviously family related complications and the length of the visa itself, and maybe restrictions about the type of job you can do. We're in a very fortunate position here in Denmark that it's relatively, in fact, it's very straightforward. Automatically, you can stay for 3 years afterwards to search if you wish. We don't expect you to spend 3 years searching for a job, but that's you have that sort of peace of mind. Because you also see post MBAs, people maybe take that first job for a year and a half and then take that step up afterwards as well. So it's not necessarily just for the sake of searching for that first job, it's also progression. And we tend to see the areas that are industries, let's say, that are progressing well and facilitating well here in Denmark, that where we tend to see our candidates go, because those are internationally focused customers that they're working with, international markets, so health sciences, like I say, financial services, consulting. Tends to be the business language is English, energy and sustainability, particularly as well, because people come in with an engineering background. And 1 in 8 workers now apparently in Copenhagen are international. So the business language and the level of English here is obviously very high. So we do tend to see our graduates go into those types of roles. We do give Danish as part of the program, but it's something that obviously you need to be strong in your English and have that expectation here. So yeah, I would say those types of industries are the ones where we're seeing the students or graduates tend to focus on, and that's where we're looking at too. So and there's not much signs, particularly in health sciences, it's still expanding here because that's Novo Nordisk, etc. But there's some really positive movement, for example, Lego and establishing here in Copenhagen too. So that's part of the motivation for people coming for sure.
I think my 5-year-old son would like the idea of being so close to the Legoland and Lego Museum. Talk to us from a perspective, France and of course the rest of the EU, the ability to start your own business, join one of the big companies in the French CAC 40 and beyond, but lots of opportunities for graduates to then pursue employment in France and beyond.
Yes, actually, indeed, it's sometimes a little bit surprising for some questions I have, because of course they come and say, well, I don't speak French, but I'm learning. How will my job search will be after? So we usually tend to say, well, it's good to start learning the basics of the language. We call it coffee machine French to start with. And then once they are in the program, we provide intensive courses up to 3 hours a week, which is integrated in the MBA curriculum. We are partnered with Alliance Française also for intensive courses before the start of the program. And but in any case, it really depends on the company ties that the MBA has with companies specifically in capital cities in Europe. So we tend to see a lot of our students working in Paris in international companies where the English language is present daily. But quite a few go to the UK and to Germany and to Switzerland and to the Netherlands for their post-MBA job. Not every role requires you specifically to know the French language, specifically with an MBA. But of course, if you are targeting a marketing career or an events management career, that will be essential, or even consulting. But most of our students, they like to first of all want to stay in France, to have the experience in France, but not necessarily you are doing an MBA at EDHEC that you will necessarily be working in France. So I think that the company ties of the school, that's the most important, and how we can help you have these connections also in the program when they are doing their MBA. So we are partnered with Amazon, with Accenture, with Schneider, lots of tech companies that are in the south of France, in the mini Silicon Valley that we call Sophia Antipolis. So that's a booming startup and AI area in the south of France. So those who want to stay in the south of France, work in tech, they have great opportunities. And we have business angels coming in on campus from that Sophia Antipolis area. But then, as Andrew said, some might not want to start also job search straight away. They want to really continue reflecting on themselves and maybe taking another pause after the MBA because it's been an intensive year, and decide really what they want to do. So yes, it's really a question of self-reflection and what you want to do after.
Well, making an informed decision is opportunities like this to hear from both of you. Andrew, you'd mentioned in the application encouraging applicants to talk with alums, but just a few final words from both of you in terms of next steps, how they can connect with the school, with yourselves and your colleagues, with students and alum. Andrew, where would you start in terms of touch points to get to better know the Copenhagen Business School MBA?
Yeah, it's an obvious thing to say, but maybe going to our full-time MBA web pages for the Copenhagen Business School, we have a specific tab called Connect with Us. So there's opportunity to ask for a virtual meeting. It gives you a list of where we're going around the world, because you can come and have a coffee with us wherever you are. And then there's upcoming events online as well. So we're a small program. We have the luxury of being able to talk to many candidates one-to-one. So I'd just encourage people to reach out via that. And obviously, maybe we can share via your platform as well, our connections. So we have a whole team that are willing to connect.
And Françoise, in terms of EDHEC, your team, and also students and alum.
Sure. Well, like Andrew said, on our webpage, we also have the Contact Us page and the profile evaluation, which is important to understand already the profile of the candidate wishing to apply. And then there is a personalized call after that. Also connection on LinkedIn. We are 3 recruitment managers, so connecting directly on the EDHEC MBA LinkedIn or my personal LinkedIn. And we also have 2 open days coming up in the month of March, one online and one on the Nice campus, which we call the Discovery Day, where our students can come on campus for a full day, sitting in class, having lunch with alumni and current students, doing a campus visit, and having even their application fast-tracked on campus for their interview.
Well, we started our first panel of this CentreCourt Festival talking about the MBA as an incredible opportunity to discover the world and to meet people from all over the world. And our viewers have the chance to meet both of you, Françoise and Andrew. Viewers, do stay with us, because in another 10-15 minutes, we'll be welcoming 2 MBA students from EDHEC and from Copenhagen, Juliana and Shifali. Thank you for getting us off to such a great, globally minded start. It was a real pleasure to have you with us.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure for us too.